Hello and welcome to the Elder Tree podcast. My name is Twiggy Dawn, founder of the Elder Tree and Alchemist Herbals. You are listening to the Herbal Educators segment, where each new moon I will be inviting a series of guests to chat about the world of herbal education, about their passions and motivations, and their dreams for the future of herbal medicine in Australia. Dipaunka Macrides is an alchemist, teacher, author and herbalist elder in Gidgeegannup, WA on Nyoongar country. In this interview, we explore Dipaunka's world and his influences and inspirations as a practitioner and educator. He shares his experience of the plants as teachers and the importance of having a direct relationship to the plants themselves. Dipaunka talks about his clinic dispensary, which boasts over 350 tinctures, 90% of which he makes himself. It is a wonderful opportunity to interview a friend on the show who happens to be a very inspirational grassroots herbal teacher and elder who does things completely and unapologetically his way. Good morning, Dipaunka, and thank you so much for joining me here on the Elder Tree podcast.
Good to be here, or there, or somewhere.
It's such an honour for me to get to interview you because you've been a very influential person on my journey. About 10 years ago, I got in touch with you to see if I could be mentored by you while I was with my family for a few months in southern WA. But as the fates would have it, that didn't get to happen. So I just bought your DVD instead and started following your work online. And then about 5 years ago, you came to Far North Queensland and I had the opportunity to work with you briefly. And I loved seeing the way that you work. And although I've never been to your herbal farmlet in the Perth Hills, I have a great appreciation for everything that you do as a healer and a herbalist and an alchemist and a naturopath and teacher.
That's a long list of stuff.
Yeah, and you're much more actually. In particular, I'm inspired by the fact that you make most of the medicines that you dispense in your clinic, and I'm inspired by the wonderful courses that you offer. And so I'd love to start off with asking you about your experience of being a student. Anyone who visits your website can see that you have extensive and diverse training and experience, but what has been, if you could share a bit about your personal experience with being a student.
It's been an interesting journey because I didn't actually plan. This wasn't my plan to be a herbalist. It wasn't my life goal. I didn't sort of leave high school and go, "Yay, I want to be a herbalist," and that's what I'm doing. I did all sorts of other stuff, lots of varied iterations of my self as a worker, working for Centrelink and all that sort of stuff. And while I was doing that, I started doing massage. So that's where my journey began. I started doing massage, and I started doing natural skincare. So I did that for about 18 years, and in the process of doing that, like doing natural skincare, I did aromatherapy. And then doing the massage, I wanted to make my own sort of massage oils, etc. And then with the natural skincare, there's obviously plants and herbs that you use as part of that process. And so I needed to learn more. I happened to be going out with a woman who was studying naturopathy at Dunn's Herbal College. You probably heard of it. And so I went along there and started doing my naturopathy course. But in the course of in the process of doing that, I should say, not the course of that course, I went, I don't want to do all this other stuff. I just want to do plants. And so just focused on that, and then didn't finish the naturopathy course, but diverged into doing plant like herbal courses. And so I did a bit of study with David Hoffman, then did a postgrad in herbal medicine with Dennis Stewart, and and then went from there. So, but I guess the germ, the seed of all that started as a child for me, growing up in Darwin and just playing with plants all the time. I grew a mango tree from a seed, and we had tropical fruits and plants everywhere. So I was constantly immersed in that as a child, but it didn't seem like anything different or special because that's just what was available. So constantly out in nature and eating, you know, foods and plants that were in the wild in Darwin. But that just was, well, that's just what you did. So it wasn't like, oh wow, this is something special, or I want to do this as a career. It was just like, well, there's food. So just eat it. And I needed this plant to you know take because I felt like I was getting sick or something like that. So this, and it was just stuff that was just passed on as a matter of course through growing up. Like my maternal grandmother, if we ever got sick, she would make up this brew, give it to us, and overnight, and we'd be fine the next day. I never knew what was in it. It was just something that Yaya made that tasted pretty gross but worked. So, and yeah, it's Greek mountain tea. Basically, it's like a wild type of sage, so very antiseptic, antibacterial, all those good properties, for killing cold bugs and things like that. And because I come from a ethnic background, Mediterranean ethnic background, there was constantly, you know, the stuff that we use for cooking was there all the time. So my mother was always cooking, and so she'd always be putting in, like rosemary and sage and thyme and lots of garlic and all of these different things into food. And then we had an uncle, Chinese uncle, wasn't blood uncle, but we called him uncle out of respect. And every time we went to his place for meals, he'd be bringing out the ginger and the, galangal and all of these other, the Asian style herbs. But again, it wasn't anything that you would go, oh wow, that's something special, because it just was part of the process and part of, the culinary experience. So, and all these different flavors, which we just took for granted because that's what we got. So I think I was very, very fortunate as a child to have that experience and to have all of those different um, influences. And then my surrogate family, um, mum was a tribal woman, so full blood tribal woman from Arnhem Land, and you know got that experience of more of a Australian type of plants and plant medicines. Not that I remember much of it, but it was there. So growing, then becoming an adult, I became vegetarian, and being vegetarian was using a lot of herbal tea. So all of that was there for me, and falling into being a herbalist just felt like a natural progression. It just felt like, well, that's what I'm going to do, because it was something I loved, and I love plants. Plants are amazing. um, the connection and the communication and the unconditional love. That's one of the things that I talk about with plants, and when I do my classes, it's like it's unconditional. They don't ask for anything. Like plants don't ask for anything. I mean, obviously you have to nurture them, feed them, look after them, etc. But they're just there and they're giving, and the amazing complexity of chemistry that's involved in each plant is just mind-boggling. And I know that's diverging from the question about my experience as a student, but that's all part of it, because as a student, when I first started, um, once I was a couple of years in, and I started to actually do some clinical work, and I thought, oh yeah, you know, I got this down, and I was very scathing, not well, scathing is probably not the right word. Very, very anti learning of all the Latin names and the botanical names, because I thought that just sounds like, pretentious wank. And you know, it's like, oh well, you can spout out Latin names, yeah. And then I went, oh, actually, it's really handy to know this stuff because if you don't identify your plants correctly, then you have a different set of parameters that the plant presents as a um, working model. So like there's sage, Salvia officinalis, and then there's Salvia apiana, and then there's Salvia, Leucantha, and then all of these different sages. So you need to specify which is the correct one that you need. So that's another thing I emphasize when I'm teaching, and having learnt that as a student. It's like it's really critical that you know your genus and your species, as you know. If you don't have that stuff down, you can make a mistake. You can fuck up and give someone the wrong medicine, and we know where that ends up. So not looking pretty. So yeah, and then again, like I said, I'm still a student. Like in clinic, I'm learning stuff all the time,
Yeah.
and it's not textbook, as like I'll get someone coming and presenting with a bunch of symptoms, and I think, oh yeah, I'll use this, and this, and then I'll use kinesiology and muscle test them, and something completely random comes up. It's like, what the hell? Why? And then it's like it turns out that they have a pre-existing condition, or they have something that they didn't tell you about that they were taking, etc. And the wisdom of the plants is such that they know, and the body, the the, the, the co-joining of those two, the wisdom of the body, the wisdom of the plants, says, well, what you think you should give them isn't what you should give them, because that's not going to work. So you need to give them this. And so one of the things, I guess, as a student, and the ongoing student that I am, that I've learned is learn to trust that the plants know what is needed, and the body knows what's needed, and to get out of the way, to not be in your head about it, to actually be intuitive and be connected and listen. So whilst listening in the classroom is one thing, but it's also listen to the plants, listen to the body. And like with teaching, one of the things I love about teaching is that I learn stuff when I'm teaching. So it's like, you might be working with me, for example, and you've discovered something by working with a specific plant, or working in a different way with that plant, with a different methodology. I might be using a tincture, and you might go, hey, I've been using it in an oil, and it works so much better than a tincture. So you know what I mean? So for me, it's just like the constant student being open to learning, and being open to the new information that's available, because there's so much new research and so many new studies that are being done all the time now, and we have the technology now to examine the chemical constituents of plants, and the actions they may have on the body or on the different organs. And so um, when I'm doing my classes, and I give the assignments to the students, they have to go away, do their assignments, then come back and present them in class. And quite often they'll present some new information that I hadn't found or hadn't heard of. And it's just like, oh, wow, okay, cool. Note to self, peppermint does X, or, something really simple that you thought, oh, yeah, it's peppermint. And then they go, well, there was this new study that found that one of the components in peppermint, is really active against, staph or strep or whatever it is. It's like, wow, who knew? It's like fucking awesome. Add that into the repertoire. So yeah,
Yeah,
hope
beautiful.
that covers the
Yeah,
question.
yeah, definitely. Well, I remember,
20 minutes later.
yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, this is our second attempt at the interview because last time we just had so many technical difficulties. And I do remember that there was a particular teacher that you focused on last time, which was the plants themselves as teachers. And
Mm,
yeah, I think that's a really important thing. I know that you have quite a deep respect for the plants themselves as living beings, and yeah, I just wonder if you want to talk a little bit about that too.
sure. Well, like I said, my experience is, I mean, there's the science which we need, like the chemistry, etc. And the specific actions of the herbs, and we need to know that. You need to know that something's an expectorant or it's a analgesic or whatever it is, so that you can apply that in the situation that's required. But there's also this wisdom that the plants carry, that they hold, as we know from shamanic cultures. Um, in shamanic cultures, they're constantly like doing dietas and things like that, and tuning in and becoming allies with specific plants. And that's something I've done with a number of different plants, and it gives you a different relationship, a different aspect to that specific plant, because it's having a communion with it on another level, which is not not tangible in terms of science. And I'm doing air quotes here, but in terms of science, because it's not quantifiable. You can't say, well, um, the plant told me X, or this is how we should use it, and they're going, well, that's not really rational. That's sort of woo woo hippy dippy shit. And it's I think that's like one of the things that I do in my classes is I get people to do a dieta with a plant. They have to. I say to them, you need to choose a plant, but I subtext that with let the plant choose you, because if you get in your head about it, you'll pick something like like I said, peppermint, or thyme, or something like that. And when over here there's this other plant that's screaming at you, it's like pick me, and quite often what I've found is that some of the students come back and say, I kept looking at this plant, but I kept getting pulled over here and pulled over here to this plant. And as it turns out, that's, the perfect companion for them. And the lessons that they learn from it are amazing. So, um, if we, I think one of the things, and this is sort of segueing back to the student thing, if we were taught in college, in herbal college, or naturopathic college, uh, that that aspect of plant medicine, to actually listen to the plants, to tune into the plants, to connect with them on a deeper level, like we do with other humans, we would learn so much more, because the plants are, sitting there going, "Hey, dummy, you know, you can use me for this," and you're sitting there going, "Well, it's not in the textbooks, and I didn't get taught that at college, so there's no point of reference here. There's no, empirical evidence." It's like, and the plants are going, "Oh, humans, they're so stupid." um, it's just like, if we honed that skill, or if we um, nurtured that skill, we would learn so much more, and we would be able to access so many more plants. There's I mean, look at Australia. I mean, how many plants are there? Different species
Mm.
and different like there's a whole bunch of genuses, but how many species of those genuses are there in this country? Thousands upon thousands, and all of them have potentiality for healing and for curing. And and again, we go back to the tribal people, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we use that one for toothache, and we use that one for stomach ache, and this one we put on a cut, and blah blah blah." And that knowledge, how much more is there still out there, that we've lost and we're not accessing. And so you mentioned before about my garden and growing plants, and for me, the joy of being able to go out and harvest a specific plant for my clinic, and to then make it into a tincture, and then to use it is really rewarding, because I get to give that medicine to someone, and I know where it's been grown. I know the conditions it grew in. I nurtured it. I raised it from a seed or from a seedling to become a fully grown plant that I can actually have access to then pass on. And so that cycle is actually really fulfilling, but also I think really vital, because you have an intimate knowledge of this particular plant medicine
Mm-hmm.
to be able to then pass on to a client and say, well, it's organic, B, it's been grown with lots of love and care, and it was processed in a way that was like straight off the bush, bang, into a jar, alcohol, water, final product. So yeah. um, so I think even if like anyone, and I guess for anyone who's listening to this podcast, anyone who's a student of herbal medicine, grow as many plants as you can. Even if you have only got a small area that you live in, like even if you live in a flat, you can grow stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So as you know, like the joy and the fulfillment that gives you to be able to walk outside and go, Freddie's just come over and he's got a gut ache, so I'll just go out and pick some chamomile and some meadowsweet and some peppermint and make up a brew for him, and off he goes. So I think and having that more intimate connection, that more intimate communication with plants, gives you a better sense of satisfaction as a pracky,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to know that you've had a hand in actually getting this to the table, so to speak.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I don't grow all of the herbs I have in my dispensary, because I've got over 340 herbs in my dispensary. So it's like that in itself would be a full-time job. But the ones that I do grow, that I have in my dispensary, when I'm actually using them, I know that this is something that I've grown. This is something that I've you know brought to the table, so to speak, and that's really satisfying. I mean, all the herbs that I have to buy in. I mean, I've actually made the tinctures, so I've
Mm-hmm.
I've been part of that process, but not totally. But it's still. But I think also the for me, being in my garden gives me a sense of healing as well. Just being around my plants
Definitely.
is healing for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as you know, like you go out into your garden, it's like, you know, and you can hear them, you can feel them, they're constantly communicating and connecting with you. We just have to be open to hear and to feel that.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
Yeah, beautiful. Wow, 340 herbs in your dispensary. That's a lot of medicine at your
I know
fingertips.
it's ridiculous.
How do you keep track of it all? Gosh.
With an alphabetical, very Virgoan, you'd really love it.
Yeah.
All alphabetical.
Another fellow Virgo.
Absolutely, yeah,
In fact, our
yeah.
birthdays are only, I think, a
Um,
couple of days apart, aren't they?
yeah, they are. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's I I I have to put the brakes on, because I constantly hear about new herbs
Yeah.
and think, oh wow, that'd be great to have in the dispensary. But then I think, well, after a while, I mean, there's specialty herbs. There's certain herbs that are I only use infrequently, and then there's others I use a lot of.
Mm,
So I've had to start really pulling the reins on myself and going, okay, how often have you used this herb? You've used
mm,
it once in 3 years, so it's a resource. It's water, it's time, it's alcohol, it's all of this resource that I'm using for something that I'm not going to use very often. So I'm starting to cut back, and if I do bring a new herb in, it's got to be something that I'm going to use a lot and a lot of,
yeah.
so that I'm actually can justify having it there on the shelf, because otherwise it's like, well, it looks impressive. Someone comes in and goes, wow, you got so many herbs, and go, yeah, I know, but it's just like, it's also time, energy to produce and to get it there. And then if I'm not going to use it, it's just sitting there gathering dust, which is, you know, a disservice and to the plants, and also uh, it's a moot point to have it if I'm not going to use it very often. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. So what do you
So
think
yeah,
would
I mean,
be
there's
some of your top plants, top medicines, like top tinctures that you use? Seem to find yourself turning
oh
back to
god,
your main allies, I suppose.
uh, how long have we got?
Like maybe the top five or something like that.
There's no top five. Honestly, like students ask me that in class. So what's your top 10 herbs? It's like, oh, Eve. I'm just like, I can't even I can't quantify that. There's just no way to put a numeric value on that, because it depends on the situation, you know, like it depends on
Mm.
um what's required. And you know, like I can rattle off the bog standard ones like Powdarka, Cat's Claw, you know, Astragalus, Andrographis, blah 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 blah, all of those guys. But then there's, you know, not obscure for me, but for some people, like sappanwood, which is tropical plant, which is so good for cleaning the blood, but also it's really good for um, people who've had MVAs or sports injuries, for helping to knit the bone and to bring blood to the site.
Mm.
And it has a whole bunch of other. It's got about 20 different actions, you know. So it's good for tetanus. It's good for Lyme disease. It's good for cancers, you know, and on it goes. That's just one example. And then there's things like Arjuna, which is a Ayurvedic herb, which a lot of people don't know about. And then, uh, you know, couch grass, you know, good old couch grass, which people don't think of, you know, that hate it in their lawns. And it's really good for systemic cancers and urinary tract infections and, you know, other stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, you know, how can I put this? There are lots of herbs that I have that I use a lot of, but there's obscure stuff that I have that I'll use in certain situations because they're nice add mixtures, like white pond lily root, for example, which is really good for urinary tract infections and bladder infections, and um, you know, and I mean, I use a lot of Schisandra, I use a lot of Withania, I use a lot of yellow dock. Um, I use white sage a lot as well, white sage leaf and white sage flower as antibacterial, antimicrobial. Um,
It's so interesting because
and
your
I see,
training was in Western herbal medicine, but so far, aside from maybe yellow dock, I'm hearing mostly, kind of from the Americas and India and tropical countries, things like that. So yeah, interesting.
yeah, yeah.
Quite.
I do use the thing. I mean, I use a lot of thyme. Thyme is
Mm.
amazing for infections and bacteria and stuff like that. But you know, so I use all the bog standard Western herbs, you know, meadowsweet, peppermint, rosemary, sage, you know, thyme, marshmallow, you know, licorice, uva ursi, buku. So I'm using a lot of the Western herbs, but yeah, my initial training was in Western herbal medicine, and I've done a lot of study into TCM and Ayurveda and South American herbals as well. So I've incorporated a lot of those where they're available and when I can get them.
Mm.
Because as I say to people, you know, herbs aren't racist. You know, herbs are not national. They don't have nationalism or national borders. Like herbs are herbs, plants are plants. They don't go, well, I'm an Indian herb, so you know you can't use me, or you know I'm a Chinese herb. I mean, that's just labels that we put on them as humans. You know, plants don't care. You know, they're just there. They do their thing. If you want to learn about them and use them, So, I mean, if you have a background in any of those modalities, like Ayurveda, TCM or Western herbal medicine, it's easy to translate across. It's easy to go, okay, so I understand the mechanics, I understand the chemistry, I understand the actions, so I know how to apply that to any specific situation. You don't have to have, and some people may, get antsy at me about this, but you don't have to have training in a particular mode or a particular set, in terms of, like, you don't have to be trained in Ayurveda to understand what the herbs do in Ayurveda. I know there's specific techniques and things like that that they use in Ayurveda,
Mm.
and specific ways of prepping the herbs, but the herb as a basic thing, if you know that it's really good for, as a analgesic, you know what an analgesic is, you know how to apply it. If you know that it's really good as um, a purgative, you know how to apply it. So it's the same in any herb. So for me, it's like, once you have that grounding, once you have that understanding of what the herbs actually, what the actions of the herbs are, and the chemistry, you know, then if you find a herb that's used in a particular tradition that has that specific chemistry or specific actions, then you can then translate that across and apply it to your own clinical practice, etc. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm. Beautiful. So, so we've explored a bit about, your I suppose background of your education, including being a student of the plants and being an ongoing student forever. But I'm curious to know what made you want to start teaching other people herbalism.
Okay, so I didn't start doing that. um, I'd been in clinical practice for, I think, 10 years before I even thought that I had anything of value to offer. And I started teaching because I, felt like it was something that was worthwhile, but also because I wanted people to have a basic, just like my beginner's course is just, well, I thought it was just a basic, home herbal course, but as it turns out, it's turned into this. It's pretty much like first and second year herbal medicine now.
Uh-huh.
That's the stage it's at now because of what I've incorporated and included. So, taken out a lot of the fluff. When I first started teaching, I was teaching history and blah 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 and stuff that now is just like, nah, we don't want that, we don't need that, let's just get straight into the meat of it. Because if you're coming to my course, I presume you can read. If you can read, I don't need to teach you about the history of herbs. Here's some books, read them. You've got it. I don't need to waste your time
Mm.
telling you about, well, back in 2000 AD, blah blah blah, whoever it was started doing X. You can read that yourself. um, so I think, so there's several layers to this. One of the things that for me I wanted to teach is so that people can actually start taking responsibility for their health
Mm.
and their family's health and their friends, and so they don't have to, run off to see someone when they've got a cold, or they've got, a bit of period pain, or they've got an upset stomach. The basic stuff. It's like, well, here's things that you can do. Here's some very simple app methods of application that you can use, like some teas or some, jams or soups or whatever it is. However you want to, apply the herbs, and you can do it for this, and this. So when I'm teaching, what I do is I do a section which is herbs for common ailments. So headaches, stomach aches, colds, flus, all the really simple stuff, so that then people have tools to actually be able to use at home.
Mm.
And it's about self empowerment. It's about people taking back their autonomy and their self governance, I guess, in terms of their health. You know, um, segueing back to when my maternal grandmother and my paternal grandmother, they came from the Greek islands, Cyprus and Crete and Castellorizo. So that's my family background. And there's no pharmacy down on the corner on the islands. They may have had doctors, I don't know, but so they had to know how to deal with the basic stuff, like the cold or the headache or the period pain or whatever it was. They needed to know what to do, and so their mothers and their grandmothers, etc., had taught them. You go out and pick this, and they always had stuff growing in their gardens anyway, because they didn't have a lot of money. So they were growing all their herbs for their food, etc., etc. So um, that self-reliance is, for me, is really important. And we've become a society of how can I put this in a way that's not going to offend 1,000 people. uh, we've become slack. That's we've become pussies. We've become like
We were trying not to
just
offend people, remember?
I'm trying not to offend people. Yeah, we've become just lazy. To not be able to say, well, okay, so I stubbed my toe and it's infected. What can I do? I don't have to race off and get some antibiotics. I can just put together a brew with some thyme and some sage and some of these plants, and job done. You and we've lost that. We've lost that self-reliance. It's so easy to just go to the chemist or to go to see your GP and get a script for antibiotics and whatever it is. And um, I mean, like, there's a situation in England at the moment, and this is just a little segue, but the nurses are on strike, the AMBOs are on strike, like, they're all striking. So, like, if you need something for your health, apart from, like your legs being chopped off, there's nothing happening. You can't just go down to the hospital because there's no one's there. So for me, if people can take care of the basic thing, like, you've got kids, they've got a stomach ache, what to do, you know. Um, you're right in the middle of your moon time, and you're having really intense period pain. You know what to do. So that was part of my motivation, is so that people can then look after themselves, because it gives you it gives you your power back, but it also means it's like it encourages people to grow plants. It encourages people to have herbs on hand, to just go into your cupboard, like your pantry, and go, oh well, what have I got in here? And so one of the exercises I give people in my class, the first exercise I give them is to go home, look in your pantry or in your kitchen cupboard or wherever you keep all your herbs and spices, and make a list of what you've got, and then bring it back to class. And then we can go through it, and I can tell you everything that's medicinal in that list.
Mm.
Yeah. And that just, people go, oh wow, I didn't know that. I thought that was just a spice. It's just like, yes, it is a spice, or what we call a spice, but it's actually medicine. Cinnamon, turmeric,
Mm.
black pepper,
All of them.
cardamom, all of it. It's medicine. And they're like, oh wow. And then it's like, well, so let's look at those things and what they do, and how you can use them as medicines.
Mm.
You're putting them into your food to give it flavor, but did you know that bay leaf does X, Y, Z? It's like, oh no, I didn't know that. And so there's I guess it's a reclamation of knowledge. you
Mm.
know like, if you go to certain cultures, like like European cultures, each of those cultures, they have their own uses for specific plants, but it's all medicine. That for me, all plants are medicine. That's just my take on it. All plants are medicine.
I think the same. Yeah. Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
definitely it's a reclamation of knowledge, isn't it? You know, like you're saying, you know, that people are slack or lazy, but really it's not. I don't think it's really like their fault. You know, it's been an intergenerational ignorance has happened, and most of us are just kind of the product of our role models and our peer groups and our society. You know, so it's great that there's teachers like you
Mm.
that are helping to reclaim that knowledge, that are helping people to remember how to work with the plants for, you know, so that they can take more responsibility for their own health and the health of their loved ones. So yeah, I kind of remind myself of that when I am working with people that are being seeming to be ignorant or unwilling to learn. It's like it's not really their fault that they're, but you know, all you can do is to show them, and it's up to them whether or not they're gonna learn and adapt to that.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that's a bit. I was a bit harsh there, but you're right. I mean, it is cultural and it is societal that we've become lazy around this because it's really
Mm.
easy. You just go down to the chemist and get some, OTC stuff, and it's boom, 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 job done. And whether it's by design or default, I don't know, but I think, I mean, I could go down a conspiracy rabbit hole there, but let's not go there because we'll be here for another half an hour. But I think I think it's important for people to understand that they have the tools available, and also, yeah, just giving people that option. Like, it means that people have an option. They have. If you give them the knowledge, then they can make a choice whether to use that or not, and then they have options to work with that if they want to. And it's I think I feel very fulfilled from teaching because at the end of when I finish a course with people, uh, it's nice to get their feedback, but it's also nice to know that there's another group of people that actually have a, a, a set of skills now that they can actually go out and use and actually do something with. And
Beautiful. Yeah.
yeah, and the more we do that, the more we impart knowledge, the more interest there is, and the more that will start to ripple out, and people become more self empowered and self reliant, and able to actually deal with the small stuff. Like, for
Hmm.
for me, I just say to people, look, the small stuff you can deal with. You're in a car accident, you go to hospital. Because there's people there that have been trained to do surgery and can patch you up and put you back together. You know, do that. I think it's giving people options so that they can then make a choice. So you can go down the allopathic model road if you want to, or you can choose the herbal, or you can do both. Like in China, I don't know about now, but years ago when people went to hospital, because I know people who went over there and trained because they were doing TCM, so they went and sort of studied in some of the hospitals over there. They said you had the option. You could have, you could have TCM herbs, or you could have allopathic medicines, or you could have both. You could have acupuncture if while you were having surgery if you wanted to, and not have anesthetic. So that to me was a very really enlightened way to go. It's just like, so you have both options and you can choose. And if you want to do both, you do both. If you want to do one or the other,
It's like that in India as well with the Ayurveda, that I've heard that it's integrated into a lot of most of the standard hospital systems have both practices, have the allopathic medicine and also the Ayurvedic medicine in there as well.
yeah, and it makes perfect sense to me. It's just, so like, I mean, I had to go to hospital a few years ago because I nearly died, and if it wasn't for the surgery, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. And I'm
Mm,
eternally grateful to the surgeon who worked on me and
mm,
saved my life. Um, but as soon as I got out of hospital and came home, I was smashing the herbs, to clear the anesthetic out of my body and clear the 50,000 liters of antibiotics that they gave me out, and just repair my body. So and I'm not dissing that because it saved my life,
Yeah.
but I'm also I as soon as I could and I got home, I was taking the herbs to build my body back up and counterbalance the things that had been given in hospital.
Mm.
So yeah, and I think also if one person, for me it's just it's this simple. If one person that I teach out of however many people I've taught takes the knowledge that I've given them and runs with that, I'm a happy camper.
Mm.
I think, yeah, job done. All it's just one, you know,
Yeah, it's a very
and
fulfilling experience to be able to make a positive impact. And yeah, I could relate to what you were saying before about how your students, that every time you kind of turn out a new group of students that have finished your course, you're like, oh, there's a whole bunch of new people in the world that have more herbal knowledge now. And I have that as well with my workshops, and often I have the people that have come along to my workshops, and I just feel so happy that now there's just much more plant lovers out there that I can actually talk to. People that I can relate to more. And but yeah, so have there been any other like hidden gems in becoming a herbal educator for you? Like explain that a little bit at the end of the course, that satisfaction you have of knowing that you're kind of the knowledge is going forth. But are there any other kind of unexpected gems in being an educator?
um, yeah, I think, I mean, I love it because it forces me to be current,
Mm,
if that makes
yeah.
sense. I'm constantly revising my course notes and constantly adding and subtracting, if that makes sense. So I'll go through and look at it and go, ooh, yeah, that's getting a bit dated. I'll take that out, or there's something as I'm going through the course notes in the class. Um, I'll I'll think of something new that I hadn't had included in the previous class and go, oh shit, oh by the way, do because I've done research and I found something new on a specific herb or a specific condition. So then I'll add that in, and so for me, it's learning as well. But I guess it's the satisfaction for me is that watching people when they first come to when the course finishes, the difference in their a awareness and b their sort of desire to learn more, or their desire to get a garden going, or to start growing their own food, or whatever any of those things, which ultimately for me are going to be beneficial for the community as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense?
Definitely.
So like you with your workshops that you're running, like if 20 people come to your workshop and three of them go home and just start planting a herb garden or planting veggies, it's like, yay, job done, really, so I've had people come and do my classes, and they're ringing me up, after the course is finished, they're ringing me up going, or messaging me saying, hey, I've just bought a whole bunch of plants and this and that and that. What can I do with it? And how do I go about, planting a veggie garden and blah, blah, blah. It's like, great, awesome. This is what you do. And I guess for some people, doing the herbal course is a spark for them to look at their lifestyle, make changes in their lifestyle and what they're consuming in terms of their food intake. So it's a ripple effect for me because I quite often will get mm, I quite often get like mothers, women who have children and families, and they'll come along, and after doing the course, they chuck out all their junk food. They stop buying stuff with sugar in it. They you know become more plant based and all of these things, and that's rewarding, because it means great. So by extension, they're impacting their own health plus the health of their friends and or their family and possibly friends. So it means the world health um, level goes up a notch. So in a way, it's like being a health crusader, but without having to get on a soapbox out in public, or be on Twitter or Instagram or something like that, and be an influencer.
Mm.
It's sort of being a very, very quiet influencer in a way, if
Infiltrating.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, an infiltrating influencer, because it's yeah, it's giving people the seeds um of health, so that they can then take that and run with that.
Mm.
Because quite often, a lot of people that come to do courses are wanting to improve their own health,
Mm.
or wanting to, you know, um, learn a different way of being, because they're sick of being sick and tired,
Mhm.
or they've had enough of feeling unwell and want to do something about it. So
Yeah.
mm,
Yeah, I talk about that ripple effect quite a lot, and I had a really great example of it last week because I run the local community gardens here, and pretty much all of the office workers around the community gardens have done my medicine making workshop, like including like all the community centre and the aged care people, the youth, yeah, all these office workers, and so I had one of them come out the other last week, and she was talking about plantain and about, she said, oh, my real takeaway from your workshop was plantain. It's become just my go-to for everything, for every bite and sting and scrape and cut and rash and everything. And she said, and I've been showing so many people how to identify it. And she's like, and I taught a mum and her kid how to identify it and how to use it. And this is an office worker that doesn't really get much time outside, and for her it was just so so empowering to get to have know a plant that's just growing pretty well everywhere, and then to be able to pass on that knowledge. And I
mm,
nearly cried because for me that's just those moments that are like, you get to really like see the ripple effects or hear it in one person. You're like, wow, you told a mum and the son, and then that son, and then like with plantain, I was actually shown that plant 10 years ago at the community gardens by a child. So it was just this like full circle of that like ripple effect with that particular plant. And yeah, and I got so emotional after that experience because I was like, oh, this, I forget sometimes you tell one person something, but then they go and tell all these other people. And so you haven't just taught a classroom of 10 people, you've just taught hundreds of people, thousands, as it gets passed on and
yeah,
on, and hopefully gets passed on in the right way. One would hope, but
yeah,
yeah. So it's a really beautiful thing to be offering to the world, and it gives me personally a lot of I suppose a lot of self esteem, and a lot of kind of self worth and purpose as well. So yeah, that's. I know I'm meant to be asking you about your hidden gems,
yeah.
but now I'm talking about mine.
No, 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 that's all right. Yeah, and that's the thing of it, is that you tell one person, but they might tell half a dozen.
Hmm.
And so that also piques the interest. It gets people to start to go, oh, well, how did you hear about that? Oh, I did this class, or I did
Mm.
this, this woman, or a friend of mine did a course, which, da da da. And that knowledge, little by little, it starts to filter out there. And so more and more people uh will start. I mean, there's people who just go, yeah, whatever, it's, not interested, too woo woo for me. But then there are those people that actually, by experience, like, will take something and use it and go, oh wow, I used that and it was amazing, and it did this and this and this. And those anecdotal shared experiences really help to pique people's interest. And
Mhm.
also, as you said, like, just the joy that you got from hearing that story. For me, it's the same. It's just like, if someone gets back to me and says, oh, you know how we talked about X in class, well, I did it and it was amazing, and I told my friends, and da da da. It's like, great. So I think, you know I think it's really critical if we have knowledge to share, and as I've said to people quite often, I say I wish I had I mean, not literally, but if I had a USB port in my head that I could just plug a external hard drive into and download the knowledge and then go here, that would be great. But then, I've rethought that,
Rethunk
rethunk it, yeah,
it.
one of those words, revisited that and thought, well, that wouldn't be useful because it's all very well to have the encyclopedia, but if you don't know how to apply it, then it's useless,
Mm.
So um, I think you know the sharing of knowledge is really really critical, and I think people seeing that you're sharing that knowledge is really critical because you're not keeping it to yourself. If I see people taking knowledge and running with it, I'm really happy. And if they go on to do more studies and learn and just really expand what they've learned, I'm really happy. So for me, it's just like, okay, great. So you're really running with this, fantastic job done. And so it's I think it also, just by sharing, is teaching, if that makes sense,
Mm.
because you're willing to share. Other people see that and go, oh, okay, so you're not hoarding that knowledge, you're not making yourself um, exclusive, and you're the only person that has that understanding.
Mhm.
So that stimulates people's um, desire or ability to go, oh, so I have some knowledge, I'm going to share that as well, and it ripples out and becomes like a small wave. So we don't just hoard it for ourselves, and we don't be like, say, well, we're not going to teach you because I am, yeah,
Ins-
I'm the one who has all the understanding.
Yeah, instead of it just being trade secrets and because that whole also that belief that with knowledge is power, and so some people can be a bit not forthcoming with sharing it because they want to stay, I don't know, stay looking wise, or I think some people as well don't share their knowledge because they've given up on ignorant humans. But good on you for not giving up on
Yeah, yeah.
ignorant humans and just doing it, sharing your wisdom with the world, because yeah, you have something really important to offer. And we need more people like you. There's not enough people that are doing face to face, like education, like what you're doing. That the grassroots, in person, small groups, like that. What you're doing is really few and far between in Australia. It's very unique and really special. There's a question that I like to ask everyone that comes on to my segment, and that's just kind of envisioning, if you could envision the future for like herbal medicine education in Australia, what would you, yeah, what would be like the perfect world? Like, what would you like to see there become more of, or be available for education?
Well, I remember last time we spoke, you said that you'd gone to Pindar.
Yeah, Pindari Farm that was run by Ken Atherton.
Yeah, in Tassie. Yeah, I'd spoken to him a couple of times, and that experience of going to a herbal farm and actually being on the ground and learning and being in with the plants. So that would be my vision. I have people from interstate who contact me and say, I really like what you're presenting. I like what you're offering for your course. Do you do it online? And I say no. Unfortunately, I say, because I don't like to not teach people, but I just say to them, no, it's hands on, it's experiential, it's in class, because that's where you really get the understanding. When you're there. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I could tell you a whole bunch of stuff online, but unless you're smelling it, tasting it, feeling it, touching it, seeing it, it's not the same. So what I'd like to see, if it were at all possible. Like, if there's anyone out there who's got shit tons of money and they want to spend it on a really good cause, uh, herbal colleges across Australia, would be, yeah, actual, herbal colleges where you go and there's a herbal garden, and you're actually in the lab producing, learning manufacturing and doing the production, and going from the garden to the lab to produce to the clinic. So the students would be doing the full circle of that.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to grow the herbs, they have to then manufacture the tinctures to then put it into practice in the clinic.
Yeah.
So it's full circle. And yeah, that would be fantastic, where you had and colleges that are just dedicated to herbal medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Not all the other stuff. I mean, sure, you need your anatomy, physiology, you need your biochemistry, you need all, like all of that stuff, but just focused on herbal medicine, not the whole naturopathic model, which
Mm-hmm.
is a, a different sort of slide, really. So yeah, that would be great. So any philanthropic, multi-millionaires out there that want to invest in starting up herbal colleges, that would be fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. If
you
all of
know
those wealthy philanthropists are listening, then they can donate some of that to the elder tree because yeah, so much of what
yeah,
you said there
absolutely.
is in the dreaming there to have internships or live-in student opportunities where people can grow the medicine, make the medicine, and then learn to dispense the medicine there in the clinic as well. So yeah, that part
Yeah.
of your dreaming there is exactly what we're wanting to be creating. But yeah, it would be great to see that happening in every state, something like it happening in every state
Mm.
of Australia.
Yeah. So yeah, it would be. I mean, that to me is the ideal, and that would be fantastic. And as you say, internships, and so that people actually really immersed in that culture, in that modality, and they have to do dietas with plants. They have to be able to go into the garden and identify everything by common name, Latin name, like genus, species, and at least be able to identify one or two actions of that specific plant, and maybe also have to be able to name one or two chemicals that plant contains, and what those chemicals do in the body.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really like immersive, in-depth um, knowledge and knowledge base, so that when they do get out there, they're really on tap with what they're doing and how they're presenting it, how they're applying it, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I mean that for me, that dreaming has been there for eons for me. I've wanted to start a herbal college for forever, but funding and also the bureaucratic red tape that's required to even get that off the ground is
Mm-hmm.
just too overwhelming. For one person, it's just like fuck that.
Mm-hmm.
That's way, yeah. So I mean, maybe collectively, as a collective across Australia, we can slowly pull it together,
Mm-hmm.
and woohoo, the first elder tree college appears somewhere,
Yeah. Yeah, it would be
or something along
wonderful.
those lines.
I look forward to the day that we're open and open for business, and we can fly you over and get you to deliver some of your courses and teachings there. It'd be amazing.
Yeah, well, whenever you want me, I'll be there. It's yeah, it would be a pleasure. It would be absolutely a pleasure to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, adding to that, like adding to what that whole idea, I think what would be really great would be also, like um, adding into the course curriculum. And again, people might think this is a bit woo woo and hippy dippy, but things like like experiencing a sweat lodge,
Oh yeah.
experiencing those other modalities of plant medicine from the other different cultures, because I think that's really like having that experience, like going into a ceremonial event like a sweat lodge,
Mm-hmm.
gives you a deeper I mean, it's challenging, but it also gives you a deeper understanding of the use of plants. Like the herbs, the sweetgrass, the cedar, etc., that are used in the sweat lodge, and that how they affect and what they are imparting.
Mm.
Yeah, because that's something that we've some of the older methodologies of using herbal medicine that we don't do anymore, like smokes and lozenges and gums and all that sort of stuff. It's just it's tinctures and pills and capsules, and that's it,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And some of the things that I talk about are like making like herbal jams.
Mm.
You know, nobody's doing that, or herbal vinegars and wines and oils and stuff. I mean, there's sort of some things out there in the very boutique, shops where you pay an arm and a leg for this stuff, but just integrating those things into people's daily lives, I think is really important as well, which should be taught. You know,
Mm.
those things should be taught in a herbal college or in a herbal school. It's
Definitely.
like, well, so there's a whole bunch of different things that you can do to bring herbs to the table. One of the I talk about herbal chocolates, and making herbal chocolates, and one of my students actually took that idea and ran with it. And when we had our wind up for the class, she bought rosemary chocolate.
Wow.
So she'd made dark chocolate with rosemary in it and a little bit of salt. And oh my God, it was fucking amazing. It was just so good. Like, just, it was like that sweetness of the cacao with a little bit of that tang of the rosemary and a little hint of salt. It was like, wow,
Mm.
who knew? So, things like that.
Yeah, great. Yeah, rosemary goes well with chocolate. Wendy Everett and I did a workshop once on rosemary, and she made rosemary chocolate, so it was really beautiful.
Oh, really? I'm gonna have to hit her up for that when I come over next time.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna start wrapping up, I think. But before we do, I just want to ask about any of your current projects and offerings. We didn't even touch on. You've written a book, you've made a DVD about medicine making. And you have an online store for purchasing your medicines, and so yeah, I just wonder if you want to talk a little bit about those offerings, the ongoing offerings you have, and then also any upcoming workshops, projects, offerings that are in the pipeline.
Yeah, look, the book was ages ago. It was just a vegetarian cookbook with a lot of herbal um, knowledge applied. So it's almost like a little mini herb book, because at the back of the book it's got a whole list of the herbs that I used in the recipes and what those herbs actually do and in terms of their medicinal properties. The DVD, again, that was quite a while ago. That was just on making a few simple herbal preparations. I'm probably due to do something new along those lines, but I haven't. There's been so much stuff going on here, like recovery after the fire and getting the block back together. So that's been a primary focus. But I've got a herbal course starting towards the end of February. I've just put the invites out for that on Sunday. So if anyone's over this way and they want to do that, then there's
Which for the listeners
some
is
workshops that I'll
is
be running
in
at,
Gidgeegannup in the Perth Hills, right?
yeah, in Gidgeegannup in Perth Hills, yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's some workshops I'm going to be doing at Elder Tree. Um,
Yeah.
see what I did there? Yeah, so
It's definitely happening.
um, yeah, and beyond that, I haven't really got anything else in the pipeline. So I'll probably be doing maybe one, like maybe 2 or 3 courses a year, probably only two. But I also do like a materia medica course, an intermediary course, which is just purely materia medica.
Mm-hmm.
But people have to have done the first course to be able to do that one, because otherwise you wouldn't understand, what was going on, because we're going to energetics and all the different doshas and all of that stuff with the herbs. So yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
all of the different actions, methods of application, and different disease states to use them for. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you offer any one like mentorship or apprenticeship type learning experiences?
I would, if anyone had the balls and the stamina to actually step up to it, because people in the past have come to me and said, "Oh, I really want to learn from you. I really want to apprentice from you." Blah blah blah, and I go, "Yep, okay." Sweep the floor, and they're like, "Oh, but I wanted to learn about herbs," and I said, "You are sweep the floor," you know,
Classic.
because like it's not glamorous. It's there's mess. There's schmutz, there's dirty dishes, there's jars that need to be cleaned, and yeah, all of that stuff. So, but in the process of that, like as you're making the tinctures, that's where you learn, because,
Mm.
and I just say to people, if you want to learn from me, ask questions. Ask questions, because I'm not going to spoon feed you, because unless you ask the question, what am I going to tell you? Like I could tell you a bunch of stuff, but if you haven't got the base knowledge, you won't understand it. And B, it needs to be relevant. Do you know what I mean? Like if
Yeah.
you ask me a question, I can answer that and give you the knowledge because you've asked me a specific question. Whereas if you say, teach me about herbs, it's like, where do you want to start? And
Mm-hmm.
how long have you got? Because this is going to take a while. Whereas you say, well, what would you do if someone came to see you and they had X? And I can go, well, it would depend on X, Y, Z, but generally I would go, take this, take that, do this, do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You it's yeah. You need to ask questions in order to get knowledge and get the right answer. So, I mean, I would like to offer that, like as you said, internship and apprenticeship, but again, it's whether people are patient enough to learn, or whether they want to come along and be have it all in one hit, and it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
Like I said right at the beginning, I'm still learning,
Mm-hmm.
and yes, I've had a couple of really good teachers, but primarily my main teachers are the plants, and that's not to diss the knowledge that I gained from the actual physical human people that I learnt from.
Mm-hmm.
But after finishing my studies, all the rest of it has been clinical experience and learning from the plants and
Mm,
making
beautiful.
mistakes.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
like if you fuck up, you learn. Because you can only fuck up once or twice, and then you need to really get it together to learn. Because if you don't, then you're out of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, if there were people that were prepared to actually, you know, do the hard work and you know, I have had students come and sit in with me in clinic as part of their college. Um, they need certain amount of clinic hours to finish, so I've had them sit in, and then
Mm-hmm.
after each person, we'll discuss, what I did, why I did what I did, why I gave the specific herbs I gave, etc. So there is that option as well if people want to do that.
Mm. Beautiful. That's good to know. Oh, wonderful. Thanks so much, Dipaunka. I think we're going to have to kind of leave it at
Yeah, it's
that.
get it's
Even
getting
though,
on.
yeah, I feel like we could just yarn for hours about all this. But thanks so much for coming on and giving us a bit of a window into your world, and sharing what you do and where you're coming from, and yeah, where you're going. It's been very insightful, and I'm sure that the listeners would have gotten a lot from it. So yeah, thank you for being a inspiration for me personally as well. All right. Yeah, have a wonderful day, and thanks very much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, out to the garden now.
Bye.
Okay, thanks, Dal.
Thank you so much for listening to the Herbal Education segment of the Elder Tree podcast. Stay tuned every new moon as I interview amazing and inspiring herbal educators from around Australia. To find out more